Sometimes the silence after goodbye is louder than the shouting that came before it. Ethan stood in the wreckage of a marriage that had promised forever, but delivered fragments. The echo of Ava's departure haunted the corners of his house. Her laughter, once stitched into every room, now replaced by the hollow hum of the refrigerator. Have you ever loved someone so much that when they left, you couldn't tell where they ended and you began? He wasn't angry. He was empty. But beneath that emptiness, something stirred. A quiet defiance. A whisper that said, "Not this time." Ava thought he'd crumble, vanish into his loneliness. But grief, when given light, can grow roots. The question wasn't whether Ethan would survive. It was what kind of man he'd become after he did. The first morning alone always lies. It feels survivable, even calm, like maybe you'll get through this after all. Ethan walked through his house as if retracing the ghost of a life that had already forgotten him. Ava's perfume still lingered in the air, mocking him with sweetness. He didn't cry. He wrote, instead, small notes to himself on torn receipts. Keep breathing. Keep moving. Every word became an anchor, a promise that he wouldn't disappear inside what she left behind. Grief doesn't always shout. It rearranges the furniture, moves in silently, and waits for you to notice. Ethan began cleaning the house as though order could substitute for peace. Each object returned to its place was a small rebellion against despair. He didn't realize yet that rebuilding often starts with the smallest gestures. At night, the house talked back. Creaks, hums, the distant train's whistle weaving through his thoughts. He poured himself a drink and stared at the empty chair across from him. You left to find happiness, he whispered. But maybe I'll find peace instead. The words surprised him. They didn't hurt as much as he expected. The storm broke that night, rain lashing against the windows like applause for his surrender. Ethan stood at the door, barefoot, watching the downpour erase the world outside. For the first time, he didn't wish she'd come back. He wished he could. Healing doesn't begin when the pain ends. It begins when you decide to live through it anyway. Ethan woke before dawn, drawn to the stillness of the world before the noise returned. He laced up his shoes, the same pair he used to wear on morning runs with Ava, though now they felt heavier, as if carrying all the words he'd never said. The city was still asleep when he stepped outside, the air cool and damp with promise. With every step, he felt something shifting. Small, fragile, but alive. Grief was still there, but so was something else. Momentum. In the weeks that followed, Ethan began to fill his silence with creation. He painted badly at first, then better. Each brushstroke felt like a heartbeat, each mistake a lesson in letting go. Ava's memory still visited, but less like a ghost and more like an echo. Something distant, harmless. He wasn't trying to erase her anymore. He was trying to rediscover himself beneath her shadow. One evening, while returning from the market, Ethan passed a cafe he and Ava used to love. He almost kept walking, but something made him stop. Through the window, he saw couples laughing, people lost in conversation. It didn't ache the way it used to. He ordered a coffee, sat alone, and realized solitude could be sacred too. There was power in being unaccompanied yet unbroken. Rebuilding isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before you forgot yourself. Ethan started journaling, not to write about Ava, but about the man he wanted to be next. Each entry was raw, uncertain, but honest. He didn't hide from the ache anymore. He learned to sit with it until it softened. The pages became a mirror reflecting not loss, but growth. Then came the evening when the sky itself seemed to forgive him. He stood on the rooftop of his building, watching the city pulse with light. Somewhere out there, Ava was living her version of freedom. But for the first time, Ethan realized, so was he. The storm inside him had quieted, replaced not with triumph but peace. He whispered into the wind, "I finally came home." The past doesn't knock. It slips through the cracks when you least expect it. Ethan was sorting through emails one quiet afternoon when her name appeared on the screen. Ava. For a moment, the world still. She wanted to catch up, her words dressed in casual warmth, but he could read the tremor between the lines. Memories rushed back, not like waves this time, but like soft rain on dry ground. Gentle, familiar, no longer drowning. He hesitated, then replied with calm grace. Sure, coffee sounds good. He didn't realize it yet, but this was not a reunion. It was a mirror, one that would show them both what they had become. They met at the same cafe where he once sat alone, but now he carried no ghosts with him. Ava arrived in a rush of perfume and carefully chosen confidence, her smile a little too bright, her eyes searching. For a moment, time folded. Two versions of themselves meeting at the same table. She talked about her life, her travels, her freedom. Ethan listened, calm, unhurried, seeing through the shimmer of her words. For once, he didn't feel small beneath her presence. He felt whole. She asked if he ever thought about what could have been. He smiled, softly, not bitterly, and said, sometimes, but what's gone taught me what to keep. Ava's expression faltered for the briefest second. She looked at him as though seeing someone she couldn't categorize anymore. Ethan had outgrown the narrative where she was the author. The power had shifted quietly, naturally, like seasons change. After she left, Ethan lingered. The chair across from him still held the warmth of her presence, but it no longer felt like gravity. He ordered another coffee and sat in silence, feeling an odd mix of nostalgia and freedom. Maybe closure wasn't something you find in words. It's what you feel when they no longer matter. That night, he returned home and stood by the window, city lights flickering below like a heartbeat. He thought about how far he'd come. From the man who once begged for her return to the man who now wished her peace. Growth, he realized, is when you can love someone without wanting them back. Sometimes the best revenge is quiet success. Ethan didn't plan to rebuild his life out of pride. It simply happened. The small art projects he began for himself turned into commissions. The local gallery calling his work honest. The same hands that once trembled with heartbreak now created beauty from what once broke him. He found rhythm in solitude, purpose in expression. And though Ava lingered at the edge of his thoughts, she no longer haunted the center. His life had grown beyond her. It was there, at one of his exhibits, that he met Lena. She wasn't like Ava. She didn't demand to be seen. She noticed. Her laughter came easily, her silence comfortable. They talked about art, about storms, about the strange ways people heal. Ethan didn't fall in love that night. He simply remembered what it felt like to be understood. And maybe that was the beginning of something softer, something truer. Days turned into weeks, and Lena became a quiet constant in Ethan's world. They painted together in silence, shared coffee without the need for words. It wasn't fireworks. It was peace. He realized love didn't have to hurt to feel real. There was no chase, no proving. Just two people standing in the present, both a little bruised, both still choosing to reach for light. Ava found his work online one night. Scrolling through photos of his gallery, she paused on a picture of him and Lena, their joy effortless. For the first time, she felt the ache of choices made too quickly. The man she'd left behind wasn't broken. He was radiant. Jealousy crept in quietly, not out of spite, but regret. She realized she had freed him to become someone she no longer recognized, and maybe never truly knew. Meanwhile, Ethan didn't know she had seen. He was too busy living. On a quiet evening, he and Lena walked along the riverside, the water reflecting the soft hum of city lights. Lena slipped her hand into his, and it fit. Not perfectly, but truthfully. For the first time since the marriage ended, Ethan didn't feel like he was rebuilding from ruins. He was simply living a life that finally felt his own. Peace, once found, always gets tested. One evening, as Ethan was cleaning up his studio, his phone buzzed. Ava again. Her message was simple. Can we talk? Just once. The words felt like a ghost tapping on the window. For a long moment he stared at the screen, the old ache whispering beneath his ribs. Part of him wanted to know why she'd reached out. Another part knew that curiosity was a door best left closed. Still, closure has a way of luring even the healed. He agreed to meet her, not out of longing but curiosity. They chose a quiet park bench near the lake, the same place they once spent lazy Sundays planning a future that never came. When Ava arrived, she looked different. The sharpness was gone. There was something fragile in her eyes, something almost apologetic. "You seem happy," she said softly. "I am," he replied, and the simplicity of that truth unsettled her more than anger ever could. Ava confessed she missed him, not the marriage, but him. The steadiness, the laughter, the quiet understanding. Ethan listened without judgment. Once, those words would have undone him. Now they only reminded him of how far he'd come. "You left to find happiness," he said gently. "I found mine by staying." His voice wasn't cruel. It was kind, final. For the first time, she understood what healing really looked like. When she left, the air felt lighter. Not from triumph, but release. Ethan walked by the water's edge, feeling the weight of years dissolve into ripples. He didn't need to prove anything to her anymore. The man she left behind was gone, replaced by someone who no longer needed to be chosen to feel whole. Sometimes, the most powerful closure is silence. That night, Lena came over. She didn't ask about Ava. She didn't need to. She could see the calm in his eyes, the peace that only comes after the storm. They sat together on the balcony, city lights flickering below, her head resting on his shoulder. Ethan thought about how endings can sometimes circle back, not to break you, but to remind you how far you've grown. Months passed. Ethan's art spread beyond the gallery. Interviews, features, a growing audience drawn not to perfection, but to truth. He didn't chase success. He nurtured meaning. Ava watched from afar, each headline a small sting of realization. The man she once left behind was now living the peace she'd always searched for. He had become the version of himself that heartbreak had once buried, and she couldn't take credit for any of it. Ava scrolled through a magazine article one night, his photograph across the page, his words about healing and growth printed below. She ran her fingers over the lines, her throat tightening. Once, she thought leaving him would open her world. Instead, it had shown her what she never understood. Real strength isn't built on escape, but on endurance. She closed the magazine and sat still, realizing that sometimes you don't lose people. You just fall out of alignment with the version of them you couldn't grow to match. Meanwhile, Ethan and Lena built something real. It wasn't perfect, but it was present. They traveled to small towns, held hands in quiet bookstores, painted in hotel rooms that smelled of turpentine and rain. Every moment felt unforced, earned. For Ethan, this wasn't a new chapter. It was the book he'd always wanted to write, the one without fear. They visited the ocean one weekend. Standing on the shore, Ethan thought about how waves never stop coming, yet the tide always finds its way home. Lena took his hand and he realized healing isn't about forgetting who hurt you. It's about remembering who you became because of it. The sea wind felt like forgiveness. Ava attended one of Ethan's shows months later. She stood at the back of the crowd, unnoticed. He was radiant, alive, grounded, smiling beside Lena. As applause filled the room, Ava felt tears slip down her cheeks, not because she missed him, but because she finally saw what love could have been if she had stayed to grow with him. She turned to leave quietly, her heart full of both sorrow and strange gratitude. The world had grown quiet in a way that felt deliberate, like a pause that honors what came before. Ethan woke to sunlight spilling across linen sheets, Lena beside him, the faint scent of her hair mingling with morning coffee. He stretched, feeling not the weight of loss, but the lightness of presence. Life had not returned to him. It had been built anew. And in this new world, every scar became a story. Every ache a lesson. They moved through their days like two people finally allowed to be themselves. Coffee on the balcony, painting in scattered sunlight, laughter that wasn't performative but entirely genuine. Every small ritual reaffirmed the truth Ethan had learned. The strongest lives are the ones we build after letting go of what we cannot change. Occasionally, Ava crossed his mind, not with longing, not with bitterness, but as a reminder of the path he'd walked. He didn't resent her choices. He understood them as he understood his own. Their stories had intersected and diverged, leaving him not hollow but whole. In the silence of remembrance, there was gratitude for what had ended and for what had begun. One weekend, they visited the mountains. Standing on a cliff's edge, wind whipping around them, Lena held his hand. Ethan felt the weight of the past settle at his feet, carried away by gusts, leaving only clarity and the pulse of life ahead. The storm had passed. The sky was wide, clear, infinite. For the first time, he could breathe without looking over his shoulder. That evening, back in their city apartment, Ethan poured 2 glasses of wine. Lena rested against him on the balcony, city lights flickering below. He lifted his glass and smiled, not a toast to what had been lost, but to what had been found. Peace, love, and the strength to be exactly who he was meant to be. The past had shaped him, heartbreak had tempered him, and now, finally, he could just